Hey guys, what's up? It's Simba here. Thank you so much for joining me on the Vision Board podcast. All right, guys. Hi, guys. Hi, guys. Welcome to the Vision Board podcast. And we have a very, very special guest. We have Nick Westoll. Nicholas, how are you feeling today?
I'm very good. And you, Simba?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for hopping on to the Vision Board podcast. And this is your Vision Board podcast once again here. I want to get started. You have a really interesting career path. I know that uh, in 2016, you've done Toronto Star, and in 2015 you've done Toronto Sun. You've been back and forth with it, but where it all started, I want to say in Hamilton, city of Hamilton, executive assistant, worked in the office of Councillor Bernie Morelli. Ta- can you explain more about your upbringing, please, and thank you, Mr. Nick.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is obviously what I'm doing now is a far cry from what I did before. So when I was in high school, I had a real interest in politics. And I guess I should go even back before that. When I think of my interest in journalism, sort of started in grade 5, it was daily
Mm-hmm.
homework to read the newspaper. So, but that passion for news didn't really go away. It just sort of maybe lurked in the background, and politics sort of overshadowed it. So when I was 16, I had, we've all have to do co-op placements. So I did a co-op with City Hamilton Elections Office. I thought, okay, this is pretty cool. I like this. I was 16 years old and I actually had my own first desk, phone line, and it's like, so I got to see
Wow.
the political side from an administrative perspective. So that was really my first foray into things. And then after the municipal election at that time, which was 2003, started to
Mm-hmm.
get to know different candidates, met a couple councillors, the mayor at the time. So yeah, I sort of get involved in the political side there, and that ultimately went for about 10 years. And
Oh my
when I
goodness.
was around 25, 26, I sort of had this thinking in my mind that, okay, well, I've always had this interest in news. I should do something about it, but I don't want to be over 30 sitting in a classroom. So I thought,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, if I'm going to go, now's really the time to do it, as I'm coming up on my 10-year mark. Could graduate just before I turned 30. So I went for it, and lo and behold, I was still one of the older ones in the classroom. But
Mm-hmm.
it was a great timing in terms of being in J school, because there were municipal election, we had provincial election, federal election, the scandal surrounding Rob Ford that happened when I was at journalism school too. So there was a lot of on the ground learning while in school. So as I was literally learning things in school, I was going out and applying that right away. So yeah, that worked all together. And I worked at the Star and the Sun, sort of alternated between my second and third years and at Humber College, and
Mm-hmm.
did my internship at Global News Toronto,
Yes.
and then not far after I graduated, got hired on full time at Global.
Because yes, that's you've had amazing stories actually, Nick. I want to say your top stories that really attracted me was the I don't know if you remember the man who carried an 89-year-old man down the 89th floor at 9/11. This has happened in 2016, September 11. I don't know if you remember that. And
Yeah, that was
for
a 15-year
me,
anniversary story. Yeah.
I was just curious to know, how, as a reporter, how would you get those exclusivity information in your possession?
That particular story, if I remember correctly, I think my former colleague at the time, Angie Seth, sort of did that, and I sort of partnered with her to do a write-up on that. And in my previous role at Global, I would work a lot with broadcast reporters. I was predominantly online, so I did a lot of online stories there. So it wasn't too irregular, rather, to work with a reporter. Sometimes I had my own stories where I was able to flush things out, and sometimes it's working with a reporter and their connections, and helping them sort of at that time build out an online version of their story.
Oh, lovely. I love that collaboration. So we know, of course, you are a special guest. We know that you are now part of City News as a multimedia journalist. I believe that's channel 57 for the folks out there, and 214 if you have Bell. But what is one thing someone does not know about Nick Westoll?
Yeah, and I'm glad you know the station numbers. I'm not quite as well versed. I'm one of the younger generations that's a bit of a cable cutter per se, and I watch consume a lot of my things online. So props to you for knowing the conventional numbers. One thing it's a bit personal, but it's like I'm a huge DVD collector. Like I know it sounds weird in the era of 2023 and streaming services,
Oh,
but
I know all about Blockbuster.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, if Blockbuster was still going today, it would sort of tug at my heartstrings a bit. But yeah, like a huge DVD collector. I grew up in the 90s and 2000s. So, when it comes to movies and media consumption, my heart is still in those decades. So it's not always easy to find that stuff on streaming services. So it's good. Actually, right now I'm blitzing through The West Wing, rewatching
Oh.
those the series there. So yeah, that's a bit of a personal tidbit that maybe not as well known.
We have to ask here at the Vision Board podcast. Okay, so now what is it that you're looking to do more of in 2023? Because you've had lots of transition in your career. You were a freelancer, and then you've went on to do behind the scene, like kind of like producing roles at the newsrooms. But what are you looking to do more of in 2023?
Yeah, it's maybe not the most exciting of answers, but it's really to continue what I have been doing. So I joined City TV toward the end of 2021, and it was a new role for me doing multimedia. So in
Mhm.
my previous role at Global for more than 5 years, I was mainly online. I did the odd bit of TV, but other than that, it was all online news. So, having done a lot of writing for the Star, the Sun, Global, I've always had this interest to sort of further develop the broadcast skills. So this position here at Cities really helped me do that. And even before 2021, like it's been a long time since I've had to edit a story together and do a lot of the shooting stories and things like that. So a lot of the technical aspects. So I've only been at that for about 15 months as of the taping of this newscast. So of this podcast rather. So I would say this year I want to keep focusing on honing the technical side, honing so that be it refining my edits, editing quicker, shooting more to keep shooting my stories, but also explore new angles for when you're shooting video and different things like that. And I'm sure that's something you can relate to, right? You're obviously you're in this medium here, you're trying to produce content for variety of social media platforms, so there's new things you want to do, even though maybe the idea or the role itself isn't so new. So yeah, this year I'm really looking to do more of what I have been able to do over the past year, which is telling stories for television, telling stories for radio, and and taking those broadcast elements and making sure that that's translating online as well.
Yes, yes, yes. I love the way you mention different perspective, like it's an old skill, but not really. It perfectly transitioned into my next question, where it's how can one get into this industry of journalism? I mean, any advice you'd have for anybody looking to get into this industry?
I almost feel like that could be a whole separate podcast episode there. It's um for people
I
who are interested. I mean, you hear a lot about layoffs and things like that in this industry. I wouldn't say the industry's dying. It's definitely changing. Like even from when I got into it, I started J School almost 10 years ago now, come September. So there's definitely a lot more on the multimedia side. I think you're seeing a lot of growth on, with podcasts, that type of thing. So the first thing I would tell anybody is be prepared to be flexible. So you may, like when I went into J School, I didn't have really a firm idea what I wanted to do. I sort of had an open mind. At the time I ended up more toward online news writing, which is fine. That's good. And but I didn't certainly set out going in the first day saying this is what I'm going to do. So you sort of
Mhm.
have to find your feet, explore, different things as you're getting them. So if anybody's going to a J school, start taking those things you're learning in the classroom and applying them outside the classroom. Try different things. You might be totally surprised where your interests lie the more you do different things. Second thing I'd say is, just dovetailing off that answer, is, and it's going to sound cliche, is you really got to put the work in. You've really got,
Yes.
do not keep it to just what you're doing in class and homework and that type of thing, because quite frankly, that's not going to cut it. I always tell this to journalism students. I want you to think of it yourself like a Google test. If somebody Googles your name, what's going to show up? So the more you have out there, the more you're publishing articles, the more you're publishing videos, you're starting to build a brand for yourself. You're building a name for yourself. So when, again, think of the Google test. If somebody Googles you, what's going to show up? I'd love to see lots of bylines. I'd love to see lots of videos. If you're doing assignments that you're submitting for marks, make the changes. If any of your instructors or profs come back and say, oh, they give you, suggestions or changes, make those changes and get it up online. Start building yourself a website. If you're using social media accounts, pin it to your name, your full name, and think of yourself a bit like a brand and start building yourself that way. Because by the time you get out of J school, the more you have built in, the more links you have, that's going to bode well for you. My first year, I wasn't working in the industry, but that first year outside of school, I was going to fires, I was going to crime scenes, I was going to all sorts of things, and even just tweeting some of these things, eventually got picked up by, I can think of a couple things that got picked up by other media outlets. So, and I was able to network with journalists out there. The media market in the GTA is very small. Yes, we're a huge region, but reporters know reporters from other outlets. So, don't be afraid to network, reach out. It's been my experience that people are very open to doing that. I don't think I'd certainly be where I am if I didn't have that type of access and advice. Another tip I'd have for people: be prepared to move out of the Toronto area. If you're studying in the Toronto area or your home community, be prepared to move. A lot of the job postings right now are not necessarily in your home community, and you should be prepared. And another part about being prepared to move is, may seem like a very odd thing, but it's something I would tell people: get a driver's license if you don't have one. Because if you have to move to a smaller market, there's no transit, there's no TTC, there's no subway. And if you have to go scene to scene to scene, you need a car. And depending on the outlet, some of the outlets may give you a vehicle to use, but you should be prepared for that possibility. So if you don't have one, that's what I would tell first years. I'd say, think about where you want to be in this industry. If you want a professional job, start thinking about getting your driver's license, because you will need it if you have to go to a smaller market.
Wow, beautifully said, Nick. To end it off, thank you for getting it done. We would love to know, is there a beautiful soundtrack I can add to the outro? And if there is, I want to know one more thing, if you can let us know that, and then also a way to close it up. I want to know if you can back to you, Simba thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, for a soundtrack, I have to say I'm a big Elton John fan. So I just saw his farewell concert. So if you were to pick anything from his catalog of music, that would certainly make me happy. I'll leave it to your hands. Anything else, but I just say anything Elton John. You've got it for me. And with that, I would say back to you.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, Nick Westoll, for getting it done at the Vision Board Podcast. I will talk to you later. You have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.